pandemic.
All right, cool, no problem. All right, well, listen, we gotta, listen. As human beings, we gotta come together at a time like this. So I need you guys to calm down. It's all right, love, she's not gonna touch you with the card. Please, guys, everybody, as human beings, let's get together. Come on now, guys. I understand, guys. Let's get together.
This is a update on concealed weapons, carrying concealed weapons, and what you can do to cope with this COVID-19 virus. The rules have changed, folks. We got a lot of things going on here with a very hostile public out there. Mr. Green.
Yes, Bob. Bob and I have compiled a number of points of real examples from real reports of real incidents of what you should not do and what you cannot do and should not do while carrying a concealed weapon and trying to respond. And we have the first slide. Again, this is a special report on the self-defense use of firearms in a COVID-19 world. Next slide, please. The coronavirus, the COVID-19, has caused reevaluation of self-defense use and display of a firearm, which Bob will go through in much more detail throughout this report. Next slide, please. Bob and I have compiled these points where the illegal use or display of firearms, and I'm going to ask Bob to comment on those. Someone grabbing your shopping cart. Bob, your experience.
Well, this kind of came up because of an incident that I personally had at Walmart. I won't mention which location because I've had, I go several Walmarts looking for things. But I got in line at Walmart to purchase some items, and there was a long line out the door. And at the end of the line, there was a giant pile of shopping carts that people had returned and left them at the end of the line instead of taking them back to the beginning for their crews to wipe them down. So as I'm standing there, the first thing that happened, Don, I didn't even tell you this part, was two guys that were, two people in front of me in line didn't like the shopping carts being in their way, so they started picking them up and throwing them into the planter. You know, the planters that the county makes them put up in front of all businesses to make it look pretty. So both of them are heaving shopping carts, one on top of the other. And I'm watching them do that, and I, step a foot or two away from where I was standing, get a little more distance between me and them. And suddenly, a voice yelled in my ear, "You're a damn liar. What the hell are you doing? What's wrong with you? Who do you think you are?" And I look back to my right, and there's a little guy about 5'5" with a shaved head, wearing a dirty t-shirt, a pair of shorts, and some kind of go-ahead sandals. And he's screaming at me. And I took a step away from him, and as I did so, he continued and he stepped in to actually be in contact with me, pushing his chest against my side. There was a Walmart security officer about 5 feet the other way. I looked over at him and said, "Are you security?" Because he was wearing a giant vest that said security. And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "This nutcase," and I turned back. And by the time I turned back to look, the guy had hot-footed it through the parking lot. I don't know how he made the speed he was making with the sandals on, and he ran away. And I could hear him screaming as he's running, "Those bastards, they're never going to get me, they're never going to get me." Obviously a guy with some serious mental issues, but welcome to COVID-19. The guy stepped right into me, and I will have to confess that it crossed my mind for a moment. I'm in that elderly group of old people with lots of serious medical conditions that I don't want to address on the air, but I really can't afford to catch COVID-19. And I thought for a moment about, do I point my gun at him to get him to step away? It never came up. And in reality, I probably wouldn't have pointed my gun at him. But when I relayed this case to my favorite attorney sitting to my left here, he said, well, he would have come down right away to bail me out of jail.
Right. But, okay. Bring your experience to bear for the Representative Joe on the street at Walmart without your experience. Somebody who got their concealed weapon permit a week ago.
And they would likely have pulled their gun, at least pointed it at the guy, and maybe shot him, and made the case that, in their own mind, that I'm in danger of dying. This is a threat to my life, that this guy in COVID-19 era is pushing himself into me and making contact with me.
Okay. But he doesn't have a weapon.
Or a face mask.
Or a face mask. No gloves.
Nope.
But where would you, for our viewers and our listeners, where would you place this in the spectrum of the fear of great bodily injury or death?
Well, that would be the case. In my case, I would have said, I'm in fear of great bodily injury or death, because everybody on television is telling me I'm going to die if I get the virus. And I didn't shoot, and I wouldn't have shot, but I'm looking at another individual without my background in training and rational thinking. There'll be comments on that, I'm sure. But I'm sure they would have been in jail for drawing and pointing or attempted murder or murder.
That's correct. Let's go to the same slide, please. Someone taking your toilet paper, yes or no, Bob, is that a legal use or display of your firearm?
No, it is a property crime only. Get some paper, some toilet paper somewhere else.
The same as the next point. Someone and for members of your audience, these are real examples. Someone taking your hand sanitizer. Is that proper for you to use or display your firearm?
Of course not.
The next slide, please. This is a favorite at Christmas time. Someone taking your parking space during COVID-19. Is this a reason to get out of your car and display your weapon?
Of course not. And we've had, because we have a tremendous increase in road rage accidents, because everybody is on edge, or roadway incidents. If you look at the statistics that are coming out of metro traffic, they're having more car wrecks because of people driving erratically. They're having more people point guns at the guy in the next vehicle that they think cut them off, and so forth and so on. And maybe did, but everybody's on edge so much that what normally would have been, you give the guy the middle finger and drive away. Now if you do that, he chases you down with a gun.
Exactly. Same slide, please. This is our social distancing issue. And we're seeing this every day. There was an incident today. Someone not standing 6 feet away in line at the store. If they're not 6 feet away, can you use your weapon, display it, and tell him to get 6 feet away?
Of course not. What you can do is get yourself 6 feet away. You're not going to win the argument if the guy's that foolish. A lot of people think they shouldn't socially distance, and they're the revolution that wants to show the government, they can do this. There's been some examples on TV of large crowds gathering here and there. And the problem is, if you want to socially distance yourself, you should do that. If you want to wear a face mask, you should do that. If you don't want to do that, don't screw with people who do.
Today, it was reported, goes to the next item here. Today, the governor of Oregon, or yesterday, issued a directive creating what could only be called a social distance police. And these are the people who are going to go and enforce not only social distancing at your home, in public, social distancing in walking on the sidewalks, social distancing in public places, and in one instance, in the past 24 to 48 hours, a woman who had a business was visited by these social distance police, and they ended up at her home with Child Protective Services wanting to know if she's properly taking care of her kids at home while she's at work. So this is the someone not wearing a mask in public. Let's go to the next slide, please. Again, someone not wearing a mask at the doctor's office. True example. What do you think about this, Bob?
I spent part of this morning at the doctor's office, and everybody was wearing face masks because the doctor's office requires that you wear them. And if you didn't have one, they would, everybody comes in, they're taking their temperature and asking, have you been to a foreign country in the last 6 weeks, and that sort of thing, the normal rundown of questions. And if you didn't have a face mask, they would give you one, hopefully. I saw a couple people who went back out to their car to get one. I didn't see anybody that actually didn't have one somewhere that they could wear. But I would assume if they didn't wear a face mask, they would give them one or sell them one, or they wouldn't go in to see the doctor. The medical providers are the first line of defense. Obviously, they wear face masks, and all the nursing staff and so forth and so on, to protect their own lives. All we need is doctors in the hospital, and then who are the doctors?
Let's stay with the same slide. Someone walking into your house without a face mask. Is that a reason to pull your weapon and tell them to get out? Well, you can tell them to get out. But is that enough that's going to save you from an arrest for assault with a deadly weapon?
That would be a question for the nearest attorney. Obviously, if someone's walking into your house, if you don't know them, we're talking about a total stranger, you open the door and they just walk in.
Well, that's different. Let's say it's a friend of yours.
It's a friend of yours. You just tell him you can't come in my house. And at that point, he's trespassing. You've ordered him not to come in the house, and he's forcing his way in by simply walking through you. Yes, it's reasonable to point your gun.
The next slide, please. This is a true example out of Henderson, Nevada, a week ago Sunday, where a gated community, a group of people in a gated community decided that they were going to have a car parade for recent graduates of various high schools in the Henderson area. And there was a report, or at least it was reported to the police, that someone was going to threaten someone with a firearm if they had the parade in front of the house, if there was someone trespassing. If someone trespasses on your house, whether it's a gated community or not, is that a reason to display a weapon?
That would really depend on the overall circumstances, how many people they are, what they're doing. People walk by your house all the time, the postman does, and this and that, and your neighbors walk up and down walking their dog. When there is a group of people and you tell them they cannot come onto your property, we still have trespassing laws. And because they want to show off that they're, violating the rules for the virus, you kind of make the rules on your own property. And this will be a state-by-state issue depending on where the line is drawn in state law for what's trespassing.
Can you use a firearm standing out in front of your yard?
In Nevada, my guess would be no. That's why I have lawyers with me all the time to ask that question. But just pointing a gun because someone is standing in front of your house or making noise, no, you call 911 and say there's people trespassing out here, there's people making noise, it's a noise complaint, send somebody over to tell these people to go away, and you stay in your house and watch. Your video doorbell is filming them, right? They aren't going anywhere. The police may take an hour to respond. So what? Doesn't matter, does it? You're not in danger.
The next slide, please, out of Texas. Someone not wearing a face mask in the drive-through lane at the bank or the pharmacy, and you draw your weapon. because they're in the next lane. What do you think about that, Mr. Irwin?
There have been a dozen of those in the recent weeks of people trying to steal food in the checkout line and by pulling up next to some vehicle that's at the window, or trying to, if they're the first car at the window, trying to rob the guy at the drive-up window at gunpoint. The guy at the drive-up window needs to duck and get out of the way. The guy's in his car. You've got a window there. Most of those are resistant to people pushing their way through those windows. They've gone to serious windows like banks because they've had robberies at drive-ups before. The guy inside is not in danger. Very unlikely that he is authorized by the owner of the property or the boss to have a gun in the window to defend himself, because he doesn't need to defend himself. He just needs to back away from the window. We've had some cases where the owner of a business with a drive-up has reacted with gunfire to a robbery. If the gun's pointed at him and it's a robbery, can he use deadly force to defend himself? Yes.
Next slide, please. And this one is going to be much more important because of the, especially in Nevada, with the governor kind of easing restrictions when it comes to eating establishments. Now, I didn't use restaurants or fast food. I just said eating establishments in general. How about someone walking in to an eating establishment, and you're there with your family, and they walk right past you, and they're sitting right next to you, and because they're not 6 feet apart, and the restaurant hasn't cordoned off areas, is that a reason to pull your firearm?
Of course not. Again, from all the previous examples, just back away. Go to a different table or go to a different restaurant if you can't get away. The likelihood that you're going to make your case for I pointed my firearm because my life was in danger is the likelihood you're going to succeed in that is just ridiculous. No court is going to hear that because they're going to say, it's always, we always want to talk about self-defense. The first rule is if you have a clear, safe, reasonable exit, you got to use it. If you can't use it because the guy chases you, now we've changed
Yes.
what's going on around. But the way you stay out of jail and out of lawsuits is you keep your temper in check and you back away. I know how annoying that really is. Back to my original example when we opened the show, I'd have loved to have shot this little jerk at the Walmart. But as Don said, he'd be down trying to bail me out.
That's right. If you had any bail. Okay. Now, the next slide, please. Or the next one, please. Stupid actions. These are true stories out of Clark County, Nevada, over the Memorial Day weekend. Bob, I had 2 questions come to me on Saturday and Sunday. To me, because they found my cellular on the internet. Can I wear a mask while open carrying a pistol in a business? Bob, response.
Yes, you can, but if you do, that is, you named it. It's a stupid decision. I know people do that, and there's no other way to describe it. You have never watched this show that I do, Fired Up with Bob Irwin. You always use force as a last resort. If you're going to walk into somebody's business with a gun and a mask on, you may well be shot by the persons inside that business. And they've got a very rational defense. The guy came in, he's wearing a mask, he had a gun. And you could say, well, everybody's wearing a mask now. Yes, that's true, but not everybody's carrying a gun.
Open carrying as well.
And if he says to you, put the gun back in your car and you can come back in, go away, and you say, it's my Second Amendment right to carry a gun wherever I want, you're going to end up in the midst of lawsuits and likely some jail time, I understand what the Second Amendment says, believe me. And I also understand private property and business property. And the guy that owns the property has the right to keep anyone or everyone for any reason or no reason off of his property. First, we have property rights.
Do you think that we're going to see, with this example, we're going to stay on this one for a moment. Do you think, Bob, that we're going to start seeing a lot of no open carry with a mask? Do you think we're going to see those signs?
I believe we are. We have places where you can't carry a gun anyway, that we go through. You can't carry a gun into a courthouse, you can't carry a gun into a jail, some of the obvious stuff. And they have signs that say on casinos, please don't carry your firearms inside, or if you want to, you got to check in with security so they can take your gun for you. We're an establishment that has gambling and drinking, and people get mad and yell at each other, and they get mad when they lose. And we would rather only our security officers have the guns. And you can say, well, that's my Second Amendment right. And they can say, but this is private property. Once again, private property wins.
Let's stay on this slide, please. Here's another one which is very timely. Came up a couple of times over the Memorial Day weekend. Refusing to leave a business when you are asked to leave for not wearing a mask. Bob?
Same answer.
Practical Bob.
Practical Bob says, then go to another business. If you don't want to wear a mask, there are businesses where you can go. My Friday lunch place, Ricardo's Mexican restaurant, is closed. One of my ex-cops friends and I usually went there on Friday afternoons for lunch, and a bunch of us would show up, from anywhere from 2 to 6 people, depending on how many of us were free at that time. And so my ex-riding buddy recommended a place called Lou's Diner. It's off of Alta and Rainbow. Alta and Jones. Alta and Rainbow. Anyway, you can find it, Lou's Diner. L-O-U.
It's in a strip mall.
Yes.
Like by an Albertsons?
In a strip mall. There's everything. There's an Albertson by everything.
Or something.
But anyway, so we went there, and I didn't see his car out there, so I'm sitting in my car for a minute, and I saw him go in. So I got up and walked in, and I left my face mask in the car, and I figured he might have to have him in there. So I went back to the car and got my face mask. And I walked in, and the entire place was full of people with no face masks, sitting next to each other, one table next to us that had 15 people at it, all laughing and eating and sharing and passing food back and forth, tasting each other's lunch. The waitresses and waiters and the cooks were wearing face masks, but nobody else was. It was like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. And nobody was worried about getting sick. There's been lots of data that, it's not really transmitted by personal contact and this and that and the other thing. And I was kind of taken aback because I'm on house arrest for all this stuff.
Yes.
And it's, the food was great. I recommend it highly. But it was a whole restaurant full of people. I saw 2 or 3 customers wearing masks that were in between bites or were just sitting talking. But the staff was, and they were giving everybody hand sanitizers and washing everybody's hands when you come in. They'd give you hand sanitizers and so forth and so on. But the vast bulk of people in there, 90% of them, we're probably talking 50, 60 people total, were violating Governor Sisolak's order to socially distant and wear masks, and good for them. And if that's what the owner of that restaurant wants to do, that's called freedom. We value that in America.
Let's have the last slide, please. We've compiled the following statistics, subject to fact checking, but this is pretty accurate. In the United States, between March of 2020 and May of 2020, across the nation, there have been approximately over 1,500 arrests of people illegally displaying firearms in the scenarios provided. There have been over 7,500 calls to police due to fights equal COVID-19. Everything from Walmart to Target. You can't go on the internet any day of the week now without seeing these reports every day. Before we leave today, Bob will have a final thought, but before we do, we'd like to educate our listeners. Bob, can you give us an update on the CCW situation in Las Vegas, Clark County, Nevada?
Yes. There was a news bulletin this morning that I spent most of the time just before we did this broadcast trying to confirm. And I was able to confirm it. I called Metro, I called Metro CCW, I called Joe Lombardo's cell phone, I called, you can name it, and I couldn't get an answer. And I finally did. Metro CCW, if you go onto their website for CCW, it will ask you, it will show you a form, there's a link to it, you fill out the form and sign it electronically and whatever you have to do. After you fill out the form, the computer will let you go to they run a quick check to see if you're a felon or a drug addict or something, that you're qualified for CCW, and there's a few questions about that. You have to fill in all that stuff. Then it links you to an appointment calendar, and you may make an appointment to come in for turning in the app and renewing or to do your fingerprint cards. If you haven't done your electronic prints with Metro, they need new cards. And it gives you an appointment to do that, and the appointments are within a few days. They're a little backed up, as you can understand, because lots of people waited to get their permits for so long, which is why they're not answering their phone. But if you go through and fill out all the stuff, which I didn't when I was looking for it, you will get through and get an appointment. I was able to discover during that time that most of the CCW classes are open again and functioning. Battlefield Vegas, where they sell my hats and books and so forth, is open again now and running all their classes and all their tanks you can shoot and all that sort of thing. So basically, the gun industry is back to where it was. Some gun shops are not open still for a variety of reasons, but it has to do with their permitting and so forth, that they haven't jumped through all the hoops. I discovered that my old haunt, the gun store, now is closed on Sunday and Monday. Whatever reason, I guess there's too many gun shops around, or they're waiting for stuff to come in, they haven't got anything to sell. But they are operating, you can use their range, and they have their classes running now. So they're social distancing, the classes are smaller than they used to be, they sit at every other table. Basically, the gun industry is running, Metro CCW is running, we are up and running, and we are almost back to being where we were before all the government agencies overreacted to this crap. And I said it before they took away our freedom to be Americans.
Final thoughts, Bob.
We're going through trying times. Everybody's going to have a short fuse for a while. We will be through with this. The vaccines seem to be on the fast track. They're spending a lot of money now on treatments and so forth. And I have to believe that everything is going to work out and we will be back to normal. The president and his entourage say the first of the year, but we should have a great third quarter. People are shopping more now. You can go to a mall. When you go to a mall, wear your mask. If they want you to wear a mask, wear a mask. It ain't going to kill you. If you don't want to wear a mask, then go to a different shopping mall. But we will be back to normal. The court system hopefully will be up and running. Don and I talked just before the show about now we're not having jury trials because of, now that's my unemployment. There ain't no jury trials, there ain't no testimony. So but I think everything will come back to normal. I am very upbeat on Las Vegas surviving this. The fact that our governor has now decided to allow casinos and restaurants in casinos. Restaurants and casinos can open if you don't go walk through. And he's supposed to make an announcement today on some openings that will be allowed with social distancing and every other slot machine or every third slot machine operating and so forth and so on. Their restaurants are open, limited capacity. But as we get more comfortable with this and we don't see the numbers climb, there will be hotspots, and there will still be older, vulnerable people who need to wear the face masks and socially distance. Let them do it. That's part of freedom. If you don't want to go and go to places without face masks, don't go. Unless it's a jury trial, then you're kind of stuck.
Right.
From what I understand, but it's an amazing time we're going through. It appears that that President Trump is doing the right thing. And I think we will pull out of this, and I think the economy will come back, and I think we'll be fine, and I think it will be way sooner than you're planning on.
Final question. As to these examples which we presented today, real examples, however stupid they seemed, do you believe that continued education with firearms and training are important?
Absolutely important. We have discussed on other shows, and it's just magnified here. The thing that would annoy me the most when I was teaching CCW was somebody coming in to retake the renewal class after 5 years, and we get them into the range, and they look at you and say, wow, I haven't fired my gun in 5 years. If you don't take continued training, you cannot keep up with your skills. You cannot keep up with the law. Things are different. The rules are different. Getting a permit for a metro is different.
Right.
You go to court and you make a wrongful shot, or you miss and you hit the wrong person, or both, which is the hardest one to defend. The shot's wrong and you hit somebody that didn't deserve it. And they say, when is the last time you practiced with your firearm or got any updated training on what the rules are currently? Because the one thing for sure in the law is it changes. And you say, I haven't shot my gun in 5 years, and the jury looks at you and awards the billion-dollar verdicts they're talking about.
Or life in prison.
Yeah, if it's a criminal case, you're just finished.
And for your viewers, you can call Bob and I. We'll give you referrals to various classes or renewal classes. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll be able to see our phone numbers, my cellular and Bob's. And I want to thank you, Bob, for your insight today and on this highly charged issue we're going through, and for helping me present this to your viewing audience. Thank you.
And I will say, because of that, my contact phone, you can see there on the bottom of the screen, is a recording device that takes the information, and I have to call you back. I do not answer it 24/7. If you don't leave a message, I can't call you back. My system does not record your phone number automatically. I have it set that way purposely. So if you want to make a comment on something, you don't want anybody to know who's calling. It's not, it's your private business. Your private conversation with me is private. But the flip side of that is, if you don't leave a number, I can't call you back.
That's right. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this COVID-19 special on firearms and concealed weapons during this epidemic. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Thursdays with a regular Fired Up show. Thanks.